On today's podcast, our guest, Alexia Erlichman from Music Gorilla. Why Alexia? Because we want to bring you all of the different kinds of services that are out there to help artists. And what Alexia's company does is they place songs into films, into television shows, into various other visual medium opportunities for you. In addition, one thing that makes Alexia very, very different is that she also provides a lot of showcase opportunities for artists, bands, independent artists to showcase down in South by Southwest as well as New York. There's a lot of great info. You don't want to miss it. Check it out. Insiders, are you ready? Welcome to MUBUTV's Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage artists and music business professionals who are dedicated to having a successful career in the new music industry. Here are your hosts, Rich Ezra and Eric Knight.
Welcome back, Insiders, to another episode of the MUBUTV Insider Podcast, where our mission is to educate, empower, and engage your music career. On today's episode, we're with Alexia Erlichman, head of song placement and artist showcase company Music Gorilla, where we discuss some of the ways her company provides opportunities for artists and songwriters to get their songs placed into films or TV shows, as well as opportunities to showcase for record labels. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Hey Insiders, are you looking to take your music career to the next level? Then you need to know about the Music Business Registry. The Music Business Registry is the leading music industry publisher of the most up-to-date contact information for major and independent record label A&R, music publishers, artist managers, music attorneys, music supervisors, and much, much more. The Music Business Registry is the trusted industry standard and source serving the music business community for over 28 years with the most accurate and up-to-date contact information available. Their titles include the A&R Registry, the Film and Television Music Monthly, the Music Publisher Registry, and the Music Attorney Registry. All of their publications are available in print, PDF, CSV, or online subscription. Visit them now at musicregistry.com and receive a 10% discount by using coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. When you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com.
Welcome back, Insiders. Today's featured interview is with Alexia Erlichman, who's the CEO of a company called Music Gorilla. And what Music Gorilla does is basically they place songs. They offer different kinds of opportunities to place songs with artists, to place songs in film and TV. And they also provide an interesting service, which is more about the artist development side of showcasing talent, both in Austin, Texas, as well as in New York.
Right, which I think they held showcases for South by Southwest that they had, and also at their own offices over there in New York. I think this is a really interesting interview. It's kind of one of our first services-based interview with a company that provides this type of service. And, I think, a lot of our audience would be very interested to hear what she has to say about the service and the opportunities that they offer.
Absolutely, Eric. And the interesting part about it is that there are so many more opportunities that are available today to people that most people don't even realize because of the volume of TV shows, the volume of visual media that's being created, that companies like this really can help tune in and put you into those kinds of situations where your music may be used. And it's a great opportunity for that.
Absolutely. So Insiders, sit back, relax, and enjoy our interview with Alexia Erlichman.
Alexia, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Well, I am too. And, I want to start at the beginning with you. You started your career in the film business. Can you tell us about the journey, how, where you were and how you came to form Music Gorilla?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know quite how far back you want to go, but yes, I grew up in New York and I went to the High School of Performing Arts for high school. And then I went to NYU for college. And when I went to college, I wanted to take a producing program. I wanted to learn how to produce film and television. And they didn't have that program at NYU yet. So I developed my own major. I went to the School of Individualized Study, and I was able to take classes at both the business school and the film school. So in that realm, I did a lot of internships. I worked for Robert De Niro's company, Tribeca Productions. I worked at a commercial production company. So I got a lot of experience. I mean, really, like, Robert De Niro was very hands-on with his production company. So we had a lot of interaction, and a lot of interaction with Jane Rosenthal, who was his producing partner. Yeah, so I was really lucky that I was able to be in those environments. And when I graduated from school, because of the contacts that I had made while I was there, I was able to start freelancing. So I worked for Miramax for a little bit, and then I started freelancing in film production. I did several feature films. I worked on Someone Like You with Linda Obst. I worked on Family Man. We did a bunch of features, and it was kind of the same team throughout. And I was living in Brooklyn at the time. And after 9/11, they refused to insure anything in New York. And so the whole team that I worked with, it's when you're working on feature films, you kind of go with the same crew almost. The executive producer tends to take their production coordinators, their assistant production coordinators, like that whole team with them, because you know how to work together very well.
And it's like a shorthand. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like you don't have to go through the whole like getting to know each other phase and feeling people out. And you can kind of like, once you're that familiar with people, because you're spending more time with these people than literally anyone else in your life. And so, so you get to know each other, and you know people's quirks, their bad habits, their good habits, and you can kind of take it from there. So when 9/11 happened, the executive producer that I worked for a lot said that they weren't going to be able to shoot anything in New York for at least a year because no one was willing to insure any film or TV projects at that time. And so I had been in Austin the summer before. I had driven cross country, and I really loved Austin. And I felt like basically my options were to move to Austin or LA. And one of my best friends is an actress and lives in LA. So she was encouraging that move. And Linda Obst actually offered me a job in LA. But I never really wanted to live in LA. So I went for Austin, and Linda introduced me to Elizabeth Avalon. And so Elizabeth Avalon is Robert Rodriguez's ex-wife and executive producing partner. And I worked on Spy Kids 2 and Once Upon a Time in Mexico with Elizabeth and Robert Rodriguez. So that was my film background. And at the time, I met someone who is now my husband. And he had this idea for a company that would help musicians. And what he really wanted to do, he knew a lot of musicians that didn't have the network to get themselves heard or to get feedback on their music, or, they didn't have those connections. And they were living in Austin. And so that wasn't really exactly a label hub. And it was the very beginning of the internet, if you can imagine.
Okay.
So I know for the younger listeners, that might seem like, a million years ago. But he wanted to build this platform that would allow musicians to access people that they wouldn't be able to access on their own. And they might not be able to access because of where they lived or their lack of connections or whatever it was. And so I always make a joke and say that I was brought into the company for my Rolodex, but it's actually not a joke. It's actually true. And he'll be the first person to admit it. But whatever works. So we started the company in 2004, and we've changed. As the music industry has changed, we've kind of adjusted our platform. But it's been a beautiful evolution.
What have been the most significant changes that you've seen since you formed Music Gorilla?
Well, when we formed Music Gorilla, we offered a paid membership. It was a paid monthly membership. And we guaranteed that the artists would get heard by industry members. And so a lot of our time was spent networking with record label A&R and making sure that they were using the site and getting people heard by them. And as things changed on the internet and as the internet affected the music industry, we started to find that it wasn't so much getting signed to a label, which is what was very, very prominent when we first started. So when we first started, everyone, their goal was to get signed. That was the beginning and the end of it. And as times evolved and as the internet evolved as a way for musicians to get opportunities themselves, to reach their fans directly, all of those things started to grow, and the priority of the musicians seemed to change, that in that they weren't necessarily so dead set on getting signed. They really just wanted to get exposure for their music and get opportunities for their music. They wanted to try and manage it on their own. Now, today we still have artists that would love to be signed, and some artists that's still their only goal. But I would say that the majority of our customers are more interested in getting film and television placement, or getting connected to a really great producer or a really great publisher, or, something that can facilitate their career, but it doesn't necessarily translate to being signed to a label.
Today, there's several companies and resources that provide music placement services to film, television, and other forms of visual media. Why should creators choose Music Gorilla?
So there are a couple ways that we differ from other companies. And then in addition, I also feel like artists should be on as many places, as many platforms, taking advantage of as many opportunities as they can. So we firmly believe that, kind of the more the better. But some of the ways that we differ are that, first of all, we're very hands-on. We're still a small company. We're still a mom and pop shop, if you will. So we have interaction with our clients, as much interaction actually as they want. We still have clients that call us on the phone or want to know, information about submissions that we'll post, and they'll call our office and they'll talk to me, or they'll talk to, someone else in the office. And we still have that very accessible, direct connection, if you will. The other thing that we do is we're not a library. And so we don't represent the music that way. We don't take any part of any publishing. We don't take any part of any deals made on the site at all. So if when an artist gets placement, they're dealing directly with the decision maker on the project. They're not dealing with us as a middleman, and we're not controlling any of their rights. So they basically use the platform. If they're selected for a project, it's up to them to determine what price they want. It's up to them to accept any deal, and it's up to them to work out that with the industry member. So we're happy to facilitate that, and we always recommend that they are represented well, whether it's by an entertainment attorney or whatever. But we don't take any part of that from them.
Are there different membership levels to join Music Gorilla?
Yeah, we have a basic membership, which is completely free.
Okay.
And so actually, I recommend that people do the basic membership and just kind of feel things out and see how many submissions are going to be appropriate for their music, because we're really about quality, not quantity. So you won't see hundreds and hundreds of submission opportunities on our site where it's, whether it's for a blog or for whatever, it's just not how we work. So I always recommend that artists sign up for basic and then feel it out, get to know the platform, check out the submissions. And at the point that they're submitting regularly, it probably makes sense to go pro, because the submissions range in price from 5 to 25 credits, which equals $1. So $5 to $25. And so if you're submitting to, a few projects a month, it's certainly the pro membership is financially makes sense. It's $19.95 a month.
Value.
Yeah, definitely. And then we also do live showcases, which is also a difference between us and other platforms that are in the space. We do showcases during South by Southwest. So we end up showcasing anywhere between 40 and 50 some odd artists every year in Austin. And then we do a couple label showcases a year in New York, where the artists get feedback on their music from a label representative or from an A&R representative, someone in the industry.
And how does that work for the showcases? Is that something that if you're subscribed to the membership that you qualify for that, or how does that work? How are the bands selected for those, like South by Southwest?
In both instances, they submit. Obviously, during our showcases, the showcases that we do during South by Southwest, we can take many more artists. So that in itself helps. When we do our showcases in New York, we narrow it down to about 5 or 6. And so the artists just submit, and we encourage them to have their profile very filled out, so their bio and their pictures, any videos, especially live videos. We love seeing live videos when we're evaluating for a showcase. And we just go through them. We have a team that goes through them. And then at times the venue will go through them as well, especially for the unofficial shows during South by. And we all kind of come together and evaluate and see what we have on the table, and then we'll notify those selected artists.
What kinds of submissions are offered to your members in terms of the various projects, not necessarily the showcases that Eric was speaking about, but the different kinds of projects that are offered? Can you talk about what kinds of submissions are offered to them?
Yeah, sure. We do a lot of commercial submissions. We have several companies that do commercial submissions with us. So we just had a submission for a car commercial that was looking for something very up-tempo and pacey. I think the example that they used was kind of a U2 sound. And we get feature film submissions, independent film submissions, documentaries are big. We also just had a call for trailer music. So it really runs the gamut. We have artists who are looking for material. So we'll have labels that are looking for material for their artists, or producers that are looking for material for their artists. So that's more of like a songwriting opportunity, and publishing opportunities. Every once in a while, we'll have a blog feature that we do as a submission, things like that.
How are the submissions screened? Like, let's say once you send out the brief or the listing to everybody that's signed up, whether it's on the free tier or the paid tier, how are those submissions screened and then moved on to the next step?
What we try to do is we try not to screen, because we really feel that the best evaluator of the music is the industry person that is requesting the music. That said, there are many times, especially in the higher profile commercial submissions that have fairly decent sized budgets, will be limited in the amount of material that we can send in. So again, we have like sort of the same evaluation process, obviously not the venues, but the same evaluation process within our network of our team here. And they will go through and they'll listen to an example track. A lot of the times the producer or the industry member will provide an example of the style that they're looking for, or a song that they would like it to sound similar to, especially in the case of high profile songs that maybe the project can't afford, but they want that vibe. And so we'll listen to the reference track, and then we'll go through the submissions and evaluate them and just see who sounds, who gets that feeling across. And we also have to make sure that we're screening for quality. So things have to be well produced and mastered in order to send in for quality. A lot of things. Yeah. Because, and I think that's like a big thing that musicians aren't aware of, is that that's very important to music supervisors on any level. It doesn't matter whether it's a commercial or a multi-million-dollar film or $100 student film. It has to sound good, or it's not gonna be able to work, because they just want to be able to drop it in their scene. They're not going to re-record it. They're not going to tweak it. All of those things. And I think that's really important.
Do you find, Alexia, that that's an issue today where, and I ask that because, coming from an A&R background as I do, that was something that, you dealt with back in the 80s and, as the 90s and the 2000s, and now here we are today, has progressed, the ability for the layman or the, beginning musician to record good quality music is something that most of them don't have to leave their home. So I'm curious, in your experience, are you finding that a lot of them is it a skill set, or is it just that they don't know that it has to be master quality?
I think it's that they don't know that it has to be master quality. And I also think there's still a disparity between the artists who are really investing in broadcast quality recording software and those that are just not, so to just, just to put it bluntly, some people just are not they're not investing the funds that are needed for broadcast quality. I think if you're using any number of the programs that are out there that are really made for home recording, then it comes across great. But I think that many people are not doing that, and they feel like, oh, I can record at home, like I can just put whatever out there. But it's really not the case. And I have a question for you. Was when you were doing A&R in the 80s, was recording quality important when people were submitting demos?
Yes, it was. And it's funny because I when I hear that question, I think back. I used to, and I wish I had it today and I don't, I used to have a collection of all of these great demos of songs that were like major hits in their original demo form. And the ones,
oh my God, wow.
And the ones that stood out to me were the ones that really they weren't, big 24 track productions, but they were very, very well recorded. The people who were doing it knew what they were doing. I remember hearing the original, it was an 8-track demo of What's Love Got to Do with It, the Tina Turner hit,
oh my God.
by the two writers who wrote that. And, it was very, very clean. It was very, very simple. It was, you could tell listening to that, number one, it was an extremely well-written song. They basically copied the demo in 24 track. And then, you listen to other things where, the quality was good. I remember when we were working on Whitney Houston's first album, I Want to Dance with Somebody Who Loves Me. Now, that original demo was like a 16-track, pop rock song. It was Narada Michael Walden who turned it into what he turned it into. But the quality of the song was totally there. The quality of the demo was there. And I will have to say, in defense of the other side of this, I worked for a guy named Clive Davis who could hear through a shitty demo.
See, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah, he really could hear, and I could play you some songs like that he found for Whitney that were like, simple, like electric piano vocal, period. The hiss on the tape, but, they became huge smashes for Whitney. So, he could hear it. He's a rare one in that regard. And it's an interesting question you're bringing up because I had this very same conversation with a very big music publisher friend of mine about 2 months ago when I went to have lunch with him at Sony ATV. And when we started talking about this, he started playing me some of the submissions of the new writers that they had. And
that he gets now?
That he gets now from his signed writers. Like, this is like something I want, here, Jim, please take this and, send it out to Rihanna and the other people. I'm telling you, Alexia, you could not tell the difference between a record on the radio and these so-called demos. And he told me there are no such thing as demos anymore. The standard has become where you as a songwriter better have your skills as a record maker.
As a producer, yeah.
As good as you can get them, not that you have to be, all the bells and whistles, but as good as you can get them to get the songs across. And he played me like 4 or 5 things that I was hard pressed to tell the difference between that and records on the radio. They were that well recorded and mixed. And that's just, so, that's always been important. The difference is that we have the technology today to do it. You had to go into a recording studio, even an 8-track recording studio back in the 80s to do that. So you needed a publisher's money or someone's money and someone's skill set.
Right, in order to bring the whole thing together.
Absolutely. And then, you can also, I remember one of the most famous demos that I ever heard was Betty Davis Eyes.
Oh. God, great song.
The original demo on that is a honky-tonk barroom song. It's a honky-tonk barroom song, and it was the keyboard player for Kim Carnes that took that song and transformed it into the very iconic atmospheric, piece that it became. They really made a phenomenal record out of it. But if you listen to the original record of that, it's unbelievable. Check out there's a CD out there. You'll probably find it on the internet called Number One with a Bullet. And it was the very, very first time that I've ever seen demos in their original form of 10 number one hit songs put out as a CD. And it's a great lesson in what...
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, definitely check that out. It's called Number One with a Bullet. It came out in like 1988, 89, something like that. And they all were number one songs in their original demo form.
Incredible. Yeah, I find that a lot of musicians ask that today because I think that there's this perception that, oh, it's just a demo. Like it could be, it doesn't have to sound great. And I feel like people's expectations are higher than that. Like I used to believe in, especially with songwriting submissions, because, and I'm talking like, 15 years ago, I would hear that it's okay because people can hear through it, kind of like what you were talking about with Clive Davis. And so it's okay if it's not a perfect demo because they're re-recording it anyway. So it's really just the song that has to grab them. But now, and like more recently, and it's so funny because I feel like that made sense, that it would make sense. They're re-recording it anyway. So if the lyrics are there, if the song itself is there, then maybe it doesn't matter so much how it sounds. But people just can't hear through low quality recording.
Hey Insiders, we hope that you've been enjoying our featured interview. Stay tuned because we've got so much more value coming your way. But before we dive back in, a word from our sponsor. Hey Rich, you're the founder, CEO, legend of Music Business Registry. Tell us what the Music Business Registry is all about.
Well, what it's about, Eric, is it's a company that is designed to provide the most accurate and up-to-date contact information for the music business. So if someone is looking to reach the A&R community, if someone is looking to reach music publishers, if someone needs to reach artist managers, if someone needs to reach music attorneys, if someone's looking to place their music into film and television and needs to reach all the music supervisors, that's the contact information that we provide. We've been doing it for 28 years. We're sort of the industry standard, if you will, for the music business and have been serving them since 1992. So that's what we do.
Amazing. So if I wanted to find out, let's say A&R people from Warner Brothers, let's say, I can just go in there and find that in the A&R registry?
Absolutely. You'll find all of the Warner Brothers in there. You'll find the Warner Brothers in LA, Warner Brothers in New York, Warner Brothers in Nashville, Warner Brothers in London, Warner Brothers, probably in Australia as well. So those are the main territories that we cover.
Amazing. And we're offering all of our insiders right now that are listening, if you visit musicregistry.com and use coupon code MUBUTV10 at checkout, you'll get a 10% discount off your first order. That's musicregistry.com, coupon code MUBUTV10. Anything else you want to say, Rich?
Well, when you're ready to put your music to work, musicregistry.com. Totally agree with you. And I also think that music supervisors, for time purposes, they cannot take a song and spend the money and the time and the energy to re-record it and get it.
Oh, no, definitely not. Yeah.
It's got to be master quality, ready to go in. Otherwise, it can't be used. Let me ask you something. How do your members receive Music Gorilla's opportunities for film or TV or albums or the different projects that the showcases, etc.? How do they get that information to them?
Well, everything is available on our website, so they can log on to the website anytime and take a look. We try to, at least when a submission is just released, or if we have something that has a deadline coming up, we will email them. So we have a very large email list, and we'll email them and try to reach them that way. We also will post them to Facebook sometimes. We post them on Twitter sometimes. But I would say that still the number one form of communication is still email.
What about submissions of beats, instrumentals, and covers?
We do instrumentals. We have a ton of instrumentals. Because we do get requests for composers, we get requests for instrumental tracks, we get requests for that trailer music request was for trailer music, which was instrumental. So we do have a lot of composers that use the site. Not so many beats, not so much just like straight up beats that are for sale. Not so much that. And with cover material, that's a tricky one. So the cover material can go on the site and it can be submitted as long as they have the proper rights. And that's a real tricky thing with a lot of artists because, even if they record something, it doesn't mean that they have the actual rights to
So they went through
it,
HFA,
or
Harry
to
Fox, or
post
whatever.
it. Yeah, exactly. Or they have the rights to post it. And even if they have both of those rights, they don't necessarily have the rights to submit it commercially. So that can be a little tricky in our space.
Can you talk about some of Music Gorilla's successes, some of the things that you've had, success with in the marketplace that our listeners would be interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been around for a while, and we've done, we've showcased a lot of people that have gotten signed and that have gone on to very big things. Rachel Platten was one of the artists that we showcased during South by Southwest. And of course, I think it was probably about 6 months later that she had that fight song was released. And a friend of ours at the record label was actually the one to sign her. And he was really excited about her at the time, was talking to us about the record. We've also had a couple artists signed to Danger Bird Records. We've had last summer, we had a band showcase for an A&R guy who does some consulting work for Red Bull Records. He also does some stuff with A2IM Management, and he has a co-management deal with Benji Madden. And so he signed a band from one of our showcases. So that's signing. That band was in the studio, and they just they're about to release their album. So that's signings. And then on the other side of things, we've had artists that have done placement in a couple feature films, some independent films. And then we just had a ton of artists. This is sort of a fun thing. There's a blog platform that does a lot of exposure for independent artists. So they interview them, they ask them questions about their music. The interviews are kind of tailored to the artist, and then they'll post a track, they'll post a video, they post to all their social networks. And this particular blog really loved what we were doing, and so they took a lot of artists from our platform. So that was really fun because there was such a large amount of them that got this opportunity to be featured. So yeah, we do a lot of that type of thing.
What would be some books or different types of media books that you would recommend people check out to educate themselves?
It's so funny. I think when we first started the company, I was very familiar with the film industry, but I was not so familiar with the record industry. And I had a lot of friends who were artists, and like I said, I went to the high school of performing arts, and so a friend of mine was a drummer for Motley Crue and Hole, and I went to her and I asked her questions, and then she introduced me to some A&R guys, and I asked them questions. But there was this book called like The Music Industry for Dummies, I think it was actually.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was laughing at myself for even reading it. But my point is that I don't know that there is like a real source for all of the information. Like I haven't come across it. I would actually love to know if there is one, because I'd be happy to recommend it. But what I find are the most valuable sources of information are people who have been in the industry. And there's so many different ways that those people kind of share their information. I wish it all came from one place, but unfortunately it requires research and some time. But I find that obviously the internet is just a wealth of information, and people are happy to share it. You just have to find it. And to me, the most important things that a musician should educate themselves about are the recording things that we discussed, because it is just more vital than anyone would ever believe. And I feel like even now, with all of these sources of information, musicians are just not educated enough on the production values that are required to make it. And then I wish that people would educate themselves about the industry, because I feel like the music industry is a business. It really is. And you have to be willing to treat it as a business, or it's going to be very difficult to succeed. And when you're dealing with a band, it's usually one band member that is sort of dealing with the business side of things. But I do feel like there are a lot of musicians who miss out because they're not prepared.
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking right to the heart of something that I have believed in for my entire life, which is, I've been dedicated to music business education for over 30 years, and I've been teaching since 1985. And I think it's absolutely crucial. I think we are in an era, like you said today, where so much information is available. I mean, I come from an era when if you didn't have $400 to get a Billboard subscription, you were simply out of luck. And that was all that existed. And today, you don't even have to leave your home. It comes to you. So, and plus, like your business is a manifestation of that. We're living in an era which is completely transformed. And if you're not aware of what's available to you, if you're not aware of all of the sources that can really help educate you and move your career forward, or if you're not interested in making those a priority for yourself as an artist, maybe this isn't a career for you. Maybe it's more of just, a hobby or something.
A hobby.
Yeah,
yep.
I totally agree with what you said, that, learning about like, why is master quality the only source for you to be submitting for? Why is, why are those things so important? We always say that it's really about devoting yourself to this as a way of life, rather than as it's not a job, it's a way of life.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was so funny. I was just having a conversation about this morning. I think when it comes to musicians, when it comes to actors or actresses, and when it comes to professional athletes, that it has to be literally the only thing that you can do. Because if you can physically, emotionally, mentally do anything else, then you don't want it badly enough. Because it takes that much focus. It takes that much energy. And there are plenty of musical hobbyists that I know a ton of musicians that they have a full-time job and they do music on the side as a hobby. And some of those are fantastic, and they've gotten placement, and they've gotten, they work with their music, and that's great. But it depends the level that you want to take it. If you're looking to really break through and really really make a career out of music, you have to be that committed to it.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think what's interesting about what you're saying is that the world has met you at that level right now. The sources of information are there. This is not the era of the 70s or 80s or 90s where it was a walled off city, and only a few lucky ones made it over the wall. This is a totally different era. I mean, I'm fond of saying that the good news for artists out there is that there are no more gatekeepers. That's the good news. But the bad news is that there are no more gates.
Right. That's exactly it. We're also inundated with everything. I mean, whether it's music or TV shows or it's just, it's crazy. Like one of the blogs I really enjoy reading is Bob Lefsetz.
Oh yeah, I know. Bob's a good friend. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think his blogs are fantastic. And a lot of the time I'll message him and ask him to repost his stuff because I feel like it's very apropos for our client base. And it's just, that's what you have to think of. Like we all have access to everything all of the time, and it's overwhelming, so right. There are no gatekeepers anymore. So fantastic. The entry to the world is accessible, but at the same time, in order to actually break through, it requires that much more because we're all so overwhelmed with information. It's crazy. It's a blessing and it's a curse all at once. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. It has its drawbacks. Listen, I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for artists or songwriters or other creatives who want to learn how to place more of their music into films or television shows or video games or other visual mediums?
Well, I think, some of the stuff that we covered, in terms of production values, I think production values are the number one barrier to entry. They've got to be top notch or it's just not placeable. In other words, if a music supervisor, no matter how much they love a track or think a track is absolutely perfect, if it is not broadcast quality, they cannot use it. And that's the bottom line. That's the beginning and end of it. So I think that that's incredibly important. And then I think that people really need to go back and focus on the song. I think that there's a lot of noise in the world, and people are worried about the way they look or what they're wearing, or learning to play another new instrument, and I'm not saying that those are not important. All of those things are part of the package, but at the end of the day, it's all about the song. And if the song isn't there, it's not going to matter what you look like. It's not going to matter how you sound. It's that important.
Absolutely. It's like our friend, rest in peace, Don Gerson said, it all starts with the music. And
Yeah. And I think we've gotten away from that because everybody wants to do these exciting productions or adding in another mix or adding in whatever, another track or whatever it is. And I think that you can't get away from that. You can't get away from the earworms that get stuck in our head because it's such a great song.
No, absolutely. I mean, did you see or happen to hear Bob's podcast with Linda Perry?
No, I read his intro for it, but I didn't have a chance to listen to it yet.
You really should. You would find it very, very interesting. She talks about this very, very quality that you just articulated. She said that there's just what she finds, and she's on the front lines producing artists a lot, and she finds exactly what you said. Way too much emphasis on social media, way too much emphasis on building followers. And she said, and when I look at these people who have all these followings, their stuff is horrible. It's horrible. There's no songs there. It's garbage. And she said, we need to get back to focusing on the music. The music needs to be great. Then you can build a following around that. But what you're doing is you're putting all your time and energy into building a following around, something that will never ever take off or ever have any kind of viability in the music marketplace. And and she's written and produced some great stuff over the years. So she really talked about that. It was a very, very, very important point that you're making, and both Eric and I, feel strongly about that it's got to start with great music, and none of this is relevant unless there's great music there.
Yeah, I agree. And people, I think more people think they have a great song than actually have a great song. I think that you have to be. I don't know, you have to try and try again,
Alexia, tell us where people can find you guys.
We're everywhere. So we are, obviously, our website is musicgorilla.com. So we're there. And then we also are on social media. So we're at Facebook /Music Gorilla, where our Instagram is Instagram /musicgorilla.com, all spelled out. Our Twitter is Music Gorilla. And it's gorilla like the animal. I should say that because sometimes people spell it like the army.
I can't thank you enough for doing this.
Thank you guys for having me. This was so fun. I really appreciate it.
Oh, we really appreciate you taking the time to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Interesting interview. Very interesting. As you know, Eric, there's a lot of these kinds of services around. Right. And Alexia Erlichman, with Music Gorilla, she runs one of the more interesting ones. I thought, from the get-go, she talked about the kinds of distinctions that make Music Gorilla stand out.
Right.
I loved when she said, we're hands-on as much as you want us to be.
Right.
Where people can call and get involved and
they're still at a mom and pop level that you can call them up.
Exactly. Which is a very, it sounds logical, but in a world today where you can't even get a phone number or an email, even on websites, it's kind of stay away. That's what's communicated.
Right.
Always in the world that we live in today, where customer service has kind of gone out the window. So remaining like that, I think, is very important. The other thing that I thought she said that made this very, very important is they do not take a percentage.
There's no middleman.
There's no middleman. They're not treating this as a library.
Right. So
they're
once
not representing you.
Right, exactly. And once you get, if there's a connection there, you guys discuss it and deal with it. They're just taking their fee for
you do it
right,
on your own.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Not
which again, getting back to the point in one of our earlier episodes, make sure you have an attorney present and make sure you got somebody reading your contract and your agreement.
exactly, absolutely.
One of the other areas that I thought were the various levels to join Music Gorilla, she actually recommends doing the free version, the basic,
To get to know the platform.
exactly, which makes absolute sense. So, anyone who's interested in visiting Music Gorilla, definitely, sign up for the free service and just, check out what's happening as far as the submissions and the different briefs that they have. And I think one of the other things that she said was, quality, not quantity. Their postings are more quality versus, a million postings.
No, I was just going to add to that, she also, she mentioned, try the thing for free. And if it works for you, the pro, if you're going to be then submitting
Right.
a lot of material to the submissions, that the pro level would be
$19.99, right?
Yeah,
Which is
and would be perhaps more economically advantageous for you.
Because I guess
Yeah.
she said that there's a fee between 5 and 25 credits per placement, and that could get costly when you're doing
Sure.
it on a free level. So with the $19.95 a month, that covers however many postings or submissions you want to do. And I thought another unique part of what they do is that they offer showcases that they
Yes.
hold
on two different levels.
Right, South by Southwest, where they hold, a bunch of showcases there during, South by Southwest week, and also doing showcases in New York where they'll invite A&R or somebody from the industry to kind of evaluate the talent and the music and kind of give them feedback.
Yeah, no, precisely. And that's something that, I'm not aware of a lot of these music services offering. She talked about the fact that, when South by Southwest was going on and we could, have showcases, they would showcase 40 to 50 acts
Right.
during the South by Southwest, where they would have a place to play. They would
Exactly.
have a specific audience. That's something very, very valuable.
Right.
To have that, because as you know, you've been to South by Southwest.
Yep.
It's, it's a madhouse down there. And so, to be able to go to a place and a club and be able to perform and know that somebody's going to be there
Right.
and that it's set up with a structure and invitations, that's very, 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 very helpful. So they offer that. And then she talked about the additional showcases in New York as well.
Exactly. And I thought some of the other things with the question when we asked about beyond songs, what about the submission of beats, instrumentals, etc. She said that they do a lot of instrumentals and they do get a lot of requests for, composers and music for trailers, not a lot of beats. So that
Right.
was interesting too. So that was great that we asked that because I guess they don't have a lot of requests for that. And then when we got into the conversation about cover material, and that's one of the things that we'll probably harp about on this here, is making sure that you have the correct licensing and the correct rights to actually do a cover.
Yeah, to post, a cover, and there are ways, that you can do that. You can go on the internet, you can get the information. But it's an interesting point you're bringing up because a lot of people, and I've heard this talked about by music supervisors, that, it's interesting how people will do a cover of a classic song, but they'll do it in such a different kind of way. They'll take a very, bright and poppy song or poppy record, and then their own version will be very, very dark.
Right.
But the underlying rights, you're asking whoever wants to license that, they've got to go to the publisher or
Right.
publishers
Exactly.
and get the rights to use that.
To use that.
The recording may be yours, but remember,
And then you have to
need
find
the-
out what they're going to ask you what's the use consist of, how many of these you plan. I mean, it gets real tricky, particularly in the streaming age.
Yes, very much so. And in the licensing age,
Right.
Is this for an ad? Is this for a movie?
Yes.
Is this for an end title? Is it for
Right.
What's the usage? But, to the point that Alexia was making is that, when it comes to covers, you got to be careful because do you have the right to just post this on the internet? A cover of
Exactly.
something,
Exactly.
of a Beatles song or whatever that you may be doing. That gets into, issues, and we've all seen, the takedown notices. Or
Right.
you click on something you want to, and
Exactly.
this video is no longer available,
Right.
or
copyright strike and all that stuff.
Exactly.
The other thing was, I guess, the advice for artists, and I thought again, getting back, this is a point that hasn't been said in some of the interviews, but obviously we know it's a crucial one, is the production value. She thought that was absolutely number one, particularly with a service like this where you're submitting for possible film and TV video game consideration. The production value has to be there. And she made it a point that even though the music supervisor might fall in love with the song, said this is the greatest thing, if it sounds like shit, it's not going to get on there. So you got to make sure. And particularly now in this day and age, I mean, stuff is being made from the home that sounds, there's records that are being made from home studios. So it can be done. There should be no excuses, but the production value is a crucial element.
This is a very important point that I don't think gets emphasized enough, because it's, again, it's one of the reasons why we're here, is that this is one of those things that in my own experience, has gone unspoken over the years.
Right.
When I was doing A&R, you could get away with a simple 4-track or a little 8-track demo. Yes. You should hear. Go on the internet and listen. Nile Rodgers has posted David Bowie's original demo. It's just guitar and voice to Let's Dance.
Right.
Okay. You wouldn't recognize it.
Right.
Okay. I could play you many, many, many hit songs from the 80s and 90s in their original demo form.
Right.
It's a different world today. When I was at a very good friend of mine who's a music publisher over at Sony ATV, I remember going to visit him about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And he played me like some of the demos that and I'm telling you, they were like records.
Right.
So the point being is that you as a songwriter, if this is going to be your profession, you need to really up your game.
Yeah, and if you can't do it, align yourself with somebody that can up your game and get it to that level, because it does have to be broadcast quality. The other big thing that she obviously focused, which is the obvious that we're harping on and will continue to harp on, is that she said to focus on the songs, that it's all about the songs.
Absolutely.
Like our good friend.
Yes, like Don Grierson always said, like his book, it all begins with the songs.
Hey Insiders, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. We really appreciate it. To get show notes, links, and everything that was mentioned during this interview, head on over to our official website at MUBUTV.com/podcast/show notes. If you're enjoying the content and what we're doing here on the show, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts from. And don't forget to rate and review our show over at iTunes. 5-star reviews are always welcome and help to ensure that our podcast stands out on the top rated and new and noteworthy charts on iTunes in our space. You can also find us on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, all ending with the handle MUBUTV, which is spelled MUBUTV. Don't forget to catch our flagship show, the MUBUTV Insider Video Series, airing every week on YouTube at youtube.com/MUBUTV. This show was produced and created by Rich Ezra and Eric Knight. This show would not be here if it weren't for our amazing team, which are the following: interview editors Sarah Nissenbaum and Alex Taylor, show notes and transcriptions by Jani Chang, Nicole Capodoglo, Lilia Owens, and Sarah Nissenbaum, theme music by Disciples of Babylon, and be sure to tune in next week for another episode of the MUBUTV Insider Podcast.